To configure app tracking permissions for Apple and Thunkable, you need to set up Apple's App Tracking Transparency, also known as ATT, through the iOS permission settings in your Thunkable project and ensure it matches Apple's App Store requirements during publishing. Start by opening your Thunkable project and going to the Design tab. From there, open the Settings area of your project, usually found through the gear icon. This is where you can configure app-level settings, including permissions required for iOS devices. Inside the Settings panel, look for the iOS Permissions section. This area controls what permissions your app requests when running on Apple devices. Among the available options, locate the field labeled Tracking Usage Description. This field is required if your app collects or uses tracking-related data. In this field, you must write a clear and user-friendly explanation of why your app is requesting tracking permission. Apple requires transparency, so your message should explain how tracking is used. For example, you can write that tracking is used to improve app experience, personalize content, or show relevant advertisements depending on your app's purpose. Once you add the tracking description, Thunkable will include it in your iOS build. However, this alone is not enough. Apple still controls when the tracking permission pop-up appears. When your app runs on an iPhone or iPad, the system will automatically display the App Tracking Transparency prompt, asking the user to either allow tracking or deny it. It is important to understand that the user must actively grant permission. If they choose not to allow tracking, iOS will block access to the device identifier used for tracking purposes. This behavior is enforced by Apple and cannot be overridden by Thunkable. After configuring the permission inside Thunkable, you must also ensure that your App Store Connect submission matches your configuration. When preparing your app for submission, go to the Privacy section in App Store Connect and declare what types of data your app collects and whether it is used for tracking purposes. This step is required for App Store approval. Consistency between Thunkable settings and App Store Connect is very important. If your tracking description or data usage does not match, Apple may reject your app during review. You should only enable tracking permissions if your app uses services such as advertising networks, analytics tools that track users across apps, or other systems that require device-level identifiers. If your app does not use tracking features, you can leave the tracking description field empty. Once everything is configured, test your app on a real iOS device using a build or test flight. This allows you to confirm that the tracking permission prompt appears correctly and that your app behaves properly when permission is granted or denied. And that's how you configure app tracking permissions for Apple and Thunkable. Set the tracking usage description in iOS permissions, ensure Apple's ATT prompt is handled by the system, and align your settings with App Store Connect before publishing your app.